What the scariest true story you know? The story of the Lake Nyos disaster. The lake periodically belches a cloud of invisible carbon dioxide gas that suffocates everything within a 16-mile radius. In 1986, over 1,700 people and all their livestock died without even understanding what was happening to them. I remember reading ages ago about a guy who was in the military. He got back home after a tour of duty to find his wife and 2 kids dead. They lived in a remote location. Turned out the mom had a sudden heart attack or stroke or something, and the 2 little kids had died of starvation or dehydration as they were too young to care for themselves. Not exactly a ghost story, but as a parent that scares the shit out of me. Alison Botha. On December 18, 1994, Port Elizabeth resident Alison Botha was abducted, raped, stabbed and left for dead by Frans du Toit and Theuns Kruger. They slashed her throat 17 times, so deep she had to hold her own head on as she crawled to the road for help. With her other hand she had to hold in the organ spilling from her stomach, where she had been stabbed more than 30 times. By some miracle the knife thrusts had missed her main arteries, so she did not bleed to death and was able to breathe through her severed trachea. There is a documentary that is on Amazon Prime called, Alison. Worth the watch but might be traumatic for some viewers. Trailer for Alison, movie camera. The story of Hugh Glass. The man was left for dead after being mauled by a grizzly bear. 2 men were supposed to stay behind with him but they were scared of Indians showing up. According to Wikipedia, Glass, who in the best historical accounts, crawled and stumbled 200 miles, 320 kilometers, to Fort Kiowa, South Dakota, after being abandoned without supplies or weapons by fellow explorers. The man traveled 200 miles on foot while badly injured with the motivation of killing the 2 men who left him behind. He forgave one of them and he couldn't touch the other guy cause he joined the army. You get the death penalty for killing a solider. The movie The Revenant was loosely based on it. Great movie by the way. The Nutty Putty Cave Incident. A spelunker got stuck upside down in a narrow cave for 26 hours. Crews tried to pull him out with pulleys, but had to be careful not to break his legs, because that could be fatal with the circumstances he was in. Rescuers even almost dislodged him, only for an anchor to fail at the last second, plunging him back into the crevice. He eventually died, and they sealed the cave shut with him inside. I'm not sure what the entire story is, but there was a body discovered somewhere in Siberia. His cause of death was freezing, but something was off. Turns out, he had been attacked by a tiger. The tiger used his jaws and grabbed the guy by his backpack, picked him up over his head, and slammed him so hard that it snapped both of his femurs. Poor dude lived 3 days after the attack, crawling around in the snow. There was a guy in my town who stalked women at the furniture store. He would watch women pick out new chairs and he would just linger there and drop these strange comments, "That chair would look nice in my den." Then one night he followed one of the women home. He sneaked into their living room and then wait for them to enter the room. He'd then jump out and surprise them. He'd yell, "I knew you took my chair." And he'd scream and chase them. This happened over the course of 5 years. The local police never did anything because he was brothers with the sheriff. Women couldn't buy furniture by themselves. They had to start bringing chaperones. I don't know if it's scary, but when I was younger, me and my twin brother would help our friend do his paper route. One summer we could smell something gross coming from one of the houses. We all didn't think anything of it until 3 days later when the smell was reaching down the driveway. We went to the back door where he normally dropped the paper and noticed it was open. We went in and looked around the house and found the owner dead. He had died of a heart attack and his cats were eating him. The Rape of Nanking. You can watch the documentary on Amazon. It's some of the most brutal attacks upon men, women, children, and the elderly that I've heard. It's heartbreaking. Soldiers would stick something up a woman's vagina to see how far it would go in. They would rape elderly women and children. They would sometimes let the prettier ones live. One soldier raped an 8-year-old girl in the street. There wasn't anything they could do but watch. I can't imagine the absolute pain and agony those poor people went through. The Dnipropetrovsk maniacs. A group of 3 teenagers in Ukraine started out committing petty robbery. They moved on to torturing animals. Not long after that they just started murdering strangers. They killed a bunch of people by bashing the shit out of them with household tools for no reason. Knowing there are people like that in the world is terrifying. People who will just murder complete strangers just for their own entertainment. Edit. Added a missing word. Edit number 2. Yes, it's the three guys one hammer. I was avoiding that detail because I didn't want to encourage people looking for it, but so many people are asking that question that it seems like I have no choice. Well, this is scary in a weird personal way, but here goes. My grandfather was hit in the lung pretty bad by a sniper in WW2. The bullet would have hit him right in his heart, but at the last second he hunched a little bit to light a cigarette. So, if my grandfather wasn't a smoker, I probably wouldn't exist right now. This was posted here the last time. The story is about a woman who was found pushing her baby had been dead on a swing for 2 days. The baby died from hypothermia and dehydration. She was found not criminally negligent due to schizophrenia. Here is the article. Absolutely horrifying. Someone close to me suffers from schizophrenia and the voices convinced them that they would chop up their significant other child. They didn't have one, and should end their life. They tried to do that and thankfully their significant other got home early to see smoke bellowing from the kitchen. Both of them were safe. That's how the significant other found out that they had schizophrenia. We got them all the help they could and they are doing a lot better now. I know, not scary, but it was sure as hell one heart attack-inducing moment for us. Years ago I was reading the local paper that had a This Day in History section. I don't remember if it occurred after the First World War or the Second, though I'm thinking it was the first. A former serviceman and his wife were having their 6th child. While she was in the hospital giving birth, he took the first 5 children to the local quarry where he killed them and then committed suicide. The Silent Gibbon twins. 2 sisters who rarely spoke except to each other. They were sent to separate boarding schools to get them to talk to other people but entered severe catatonia. They were eventually hospitalized and made a pact that if one of them died, the other must speak and live a normal life. They had a months-long discussion and decided which one should commit suicide. Eventually, one died of heart inflammation, no causes noted on the autopsy. And just moments after the planned time the other spoke, "I'm free at last, liberated, and at last Jennifer has given up her life for me." A few years ago, a dude dressed as a clown came to a camp one went to. Apparently he broke into the cabin I was staying in and stole stuff from some people in my cabin. He took primarily cash and a phone that kids had on them. I saw him there but I was so young I didn't think much of it. Apparently they couldn't find him because of the gloves he wore and his full body costume. All of the kids had their stuff replaced, but the craziest part is a few of us heard a scream that could not have come from a grown man that came from the road. That dude was weird and it was terrifying as an 11-year-old. One day, this kid gets taken to school by his stepmom for a big science fair. Things go well, he has his picture taken, stepmom watches him go down the hallway to class, and he's never seen again. My soccer coach used to tell us this story whenever we were practicing heading the ball. My coach said he had a player who went out of his way to head the ball as much as possible and got really good at it. But one time the ball hit him square on the top of his head and his tongue was out. The guy ended up biting his own tongue in half. You might think he was just telling a story, but he told it with such seriousness I 100% believe him. Scared me off heading the ball every chance I got. Joseph Fritzl imprisoned his daughter in a secret room in his basement for 24 years, and fathered 6-7 children on her. Even though this is a common topic, I always upvote them because these are my favorite types of threads. What's the worst thing you've had happen to your genitals? Slid down a board I was using as a slide when I was around 4 or 5. There was a nail in it and tore open my scrotum and my mom said the doctors used 5 or 6 stitches to close it. I have a skin disease called lichen sclerosis which primarily affects the genital area. It makes the skin go all white, thin, and crinkly and it tears and bruises really easily. It's quite painful and itchy as hell. When left untreated, the scar tissue can be permanently disfiguring. Before my doctor figured out what it was, I had to drop out of uni because it was causing me so much pain I couldn't sit down, and I spent all day every day for about 3 months with ice packs down my pants. Thankfully, it is easily treated with topical steroids, and now I'm fine. Drinking tea nude in bed. Spilled boiling water right on my penis. Second place, going to bed and cat snuggles on top of my chest. As she does, she digs her claws into my nipple. I scream, she leaps into the air and lands right on my balls. Got my scrotum stuck in hair clippers that I was trying to shave my balls with. Luckily the cut wasn't too bad, but I learnt that day your ball bag bleeds profusely from the smalls of cuts. It looked like a murder scene. I lived in Florida as a teen. On more than one occasion I'd be sitting in the grass, minding my own business, then suddenly my vulva would be burning from fire ants that crawled in my pants. Some things were never meant to be bitten. Cancer. Thought I had cancer, which turned out to be varicose veins. A few years ago I was in a motorcycle accident. Somebody cut me off right in front of me and slammed on their brakes. Nowhere for me to go, and I slammed into them at about 45 miles per hour. My crotch area hit the gas tank, then the triple clamp, and then ripped the windshield off my bike. It was a sport bike too, so the windshield was pointing back and my nuts hit the top edge of it. Even after all that, I still had enough momentum to go flying off the bike and land on my head. My nuts swelled to the size of a baseball, and my dong was solid purple from the bruising. Ultrasound showed internal bleeding in my testicle. I ended up with permanent nerve damage, so my right nut hurts literally all the time now. Two things actually. Once I got two very powerful small magnets pinched on my foreskin. Hospital visit and scarring. Next I did anal without a condom, and some fecal matter went down the hole and infected the cords in my balls. Epididymitis, I think, is what it's called. And that is what convinced me to never do raw anal again. Edit. You all have no clue how good it feels to know that the magnet story happened to other people. Thanks. Right facing fist, left facing fist. I had a guy take a knife to my vagina last year when I tried to break off the relationship. Wounds got infected up near my cervix. It was awful. My first baby tore me in a way that caused my pelvic organs, bladder, rectum, uterus, to prolapse. I dealt with it for 7 years until I was done having babies and had a 7-hour surgery to reconstruct the whole area. I was playing softball once. I was the catcher for a round. Let's say that round the ball wasn't soft. Had a urine catheter during a hospital stay, and a doctor stepped in on the tubing. It pulled the balloon right down my penis. I was too weak to talk. Plus my vocal cords were fucked. I was grabbing at nurses trying to get their attention. The piss was just not being collected by the catheter and collecting on the bed. I was cold wet and my cock was in fucking agony, like knives slitting it from the inside. A nurse slipped on my piss as it spilt onto the floor. I wrote down what happened and she removed the catheter and asked if I wanted a new one in. Fuck that, it was one of the biggest reliefs of my life getting that fucking cock-splitting balloon out of me. I was shaving my balls and I cut myself. So, nothing too terrible. Testicular torsion. Had this little kid straight up deck me in the dick. Sat on one of those bamboo shower seats and got a nut caught between the slats. I had to call out to my wife for help, and she eventually did, between uncontrollable fits of laughter. I was struck with a 80-90 Malif baseball in the groin while not wearing a cup. Thankfully I was overweight at the time and my fat thighs shielded my twig and berries from the majority of the impact. If the ball had hit just a little bit higher or had some spin to carry the force upward, I might have lost my dick. The doctors told me how incredibly lucky I was. I didn't feel that way though for a couple of weeks. I was not playing baseball, nor was I near a baseball field. Yes, they were aiming at my balls. Shrapnel took one nut, then cancer took my other. I am now a no-nut wonder. It looks super funny too, and I'm afraid of implants because the docs said my body might reject them. My first baby was a forceps baby who tore me from asshole to appetite. I finally just got the whole works repaired. She is a teenager now. I would highly recommend all women with birth trauma to get it repaired. I had physical therapy for years, but the surgery is what I needed. My quality of life is so much better.